Now, it is true that perhaps Polycarp may have known some of the original disciples. I doubt that. They were probably all dead by the time that he would have been 14 or 13, something like that, except maybe John, but I'm not even sure about that. He may have also known some very, some Christians who were very young during the Christ movement, who by his time would have been older men and women. But this we do know, and that is that Polycarp, early on in his life, was given over to Jesus, most likely at infant baptism, and he devoted himself to holy service well into his 80s. And I do realize, and I would love to have an argument, a civil argument with my friends who are Baptists who talk about believer baptism, and that there is no such thing, excuse me, as infant baptism. And the problem is that Polycarp, as you'll see, lived to be 86, and he talks about how he's been with Jesus Christ for 86 years old, for 86 years. Now, he was born in, say, 70 and died in 56, 156, so that'd be about 86 years. So one presumes that he's talking about a relationship with Jesus that began with his baptism. Perhaps not. But be that as it may, Bishop Polycarp, that's eventually what he became, is an important figure in the life of the developing church, in that he, along with others who now are called the early Christian fathers, and they were called fathers because there weren't too many women that received the recognition that these men did. And these ended up being those men of faith who wrote about what transpired following the deaths of the original apostles. That would have been in, oh gosh, I don't know, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then that period of another 60 or 70 years. And so they were in this transition period where they assumed or were appointed or blessed or whatever the word is with the leadership responsibilities of taking the new church and expanding it without the benefit of the original apostles, disciples, and even followers of Jesus Christ. And so they take the early church through this interesting period and then write about it. And what they write about is going through two important movements, for them at any rate. One, how to wrestle with the impending aggressiveness of the Roman Empire and the butcheries that they are now prosecuting against people who call themselves Christ. That. And then on the other hand, in the emerging new church, following the leadership of the disciples and the apostles, the church is beginning to divide and to split and to fragment a little bit over all sorts of different theologies and ideations and philosophies, and how do you hold this together? And so when you read the early church fathers, they're dealing with those internal controversies that are also going on in the early church as well, and forcing the early congregations to deal with. I've said this before, sometimes we have the bad idea that the earliest Christians were filled with love and that they got along with each other and that everything was hunky-dory, when in fact it's just the opposite. It was a very difficult, painful, interesting time, as it remains to this day. So the people who want to get back to the good old days, really don't want to do that. Unless you want to be with a bunch of racists, because that's what the early church was, and I don't want anything to do with them myself. But it's not the primary reason, namely, that Polycarp was about dealing with church controversies, which he did, and somewhat naively, but I think effectively in this letter that he wrote to the church in Corinth, interestingly enough, about these divisions and where the younger people in the congregation are trying to usurp the authority of the older members. That's kind of a fun read, and you can read it, anybody that wants to. But rather, the reason I've always been fond of Polycarp, interestingly enough, is the way that he decided to be about his death. And the way he decided to be about his death is quite interesting. I'll tell you about it in just a second. They put a lion in front of him, and he dismissed the lion. And he said, "I would rather have the flames." That's what I would rather deal with. So in a fascinating letter called The Martyrdom of St. Polycarp, written by an eyewitness to his murder in the year maybe 556 in Smyrna by the Roman authorities, what happens, and I'm going to read this to you, is they drag him. They didn't really drag him, as a matter of fact. They go about trying to find him because they're really perturbed with him, because Polycarp has got this following and the people love him, and so they keep trying to find him, and they finally find him, and he's asleep in his bed, and they ask him to come along to be interrogated, and he says, "Fine, I'll do that." He's an older gentleman, you see. And so this is what happens here in the Martyrdom of Polycarp, written by an eyewitness. This is part of it, of course. And when finally he was brought up, there was a great tumult on hearing that Polycarp had been arrested. Therefore, when he was brought before him, the proconsul asked him if he were Polycarp. And when he confessed that he was, he then tried to persuade him to deny the faith, saying, "Have respect to your age," and other things that customarily follow this, such as swear. He's talking to Polycarp. "Swear by the fortune of Caesar. Change your mind today. Say, away with atheists." In other words, admit that you're an atheist, that you don't honor and respect the gods of Rome, and so that means you're an atheist, and so, just deny that, and we'll save your old withering hide. But Polycarp looked with earnest face at the whole crowd of the lawless heathen in the arena, and motioned to them with his hand. Then, groaning and looked to heaven, he said, and then looking at them, "Away with atheists." So he in turn calls them atheists. But the proconsul was insistent and said, take the oath, and I shall release you. Curse Christ." Polycarp said, this is what I like. Polycarp said, 86 years I have served him, and he never did me any wrong. How can I blaspheme my king who saved me? And upon hearing his persisting still and saying, "Swear by the fortune of Caesar," he answered, "If you vainly suppose that I shall swear by the fortune of Caesar, as you say, and pretend that you do not know who I am, listen plainly. I am a Christian." They kill him. Now, it is not so much for me that Polycarp refused to curse Christ and so deny Jesus. That is superlative, although that is. Rather, it is that he had enjoyed a personal, intense, and living relationship with Jesus for over 86 years, and he didn't fail.